Good morning, everyone. This is Ken Ripley with KFST, AM and FM, and KFSTradio.com, and we have a couple of school officials today here with us, and we're going to be talking about the Fort Stockton ISD bond election, which is coming up on May the 7th, with early voting starting on Monday, April 25th. So today we have Gilray Madrid, who is Assistant Superintendent, and he's also in charge of the Fort Stockton Middle School campus. And then Roy Alvarado is also here today, another assistant superintendent, and he is in charge of the high school campus. So, gentlemen, welcome to the show today.
Good morning, Ken. Thank you for taking the time to visit with us today.
And Mr. Madrid?
Good morning, Mr. Ripley, and thank you for all our loyal fans out there listening to KFST Radio, whether they're at their home or their offices or on the road. We do appreciate you guys spending some time with us this morning.
Okay, and of course we are streaming on our website too. If someone wants to listen on their smartphones or on their computer, the laptop, or anything like that, we're probably also on TuneIn and some other radio apps. So, well, we've got the Fort Stockton ISD bond election, which is totaling $110 million to improve the Fort Stockton ISD. We've got 5 different propositions. So, Mr. Madrid, let's start with you, and let's talk about some of the high points of this bond election.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ripley. Some of the high points, of course, looking at the propositions is starting out with Proposition A, which directly impacts the educational facilities and our transportation department within the school district. When we talk about transportation, we talk about all the students that we have on the road, and the best thing to do is keep our students safe on the road.
That's right.
And so we have a lot of vehicles that are a little bit older than what you would see out in the normal road compared to other industries. And so it's extremely important to keep our students safe. And so with that being said, we are looking at improving our bus fleet for the routes and for our activities as well. It may have been mentioned before that some of our buses have been around since the 90s, and some of our buses have, about 500,000 miles to them. So we do use them. We use them. When you live in West Texas and your closest town is about an hour away compared to living in the bigger cities, when it's about 10 minutes away, we do put a lot of miles on the buses. And so,
well, I know James Warnick is out at the bus barn.
Correct.
And you also kind of oversee that department, don't you?
Correct. And James is doing a fantastic job out there. We've worked out deals with DPS to handle our CDL testing here in Fort Stockton at our bus barn to help get people out there to join us to be a bus driver.
Right. You're a little bit short of bus drivers and CDL licensees. So
we're a little bit short on that. And, of course, I think you look at the total industry in the nation, we're shorthanded in schools, bus drivers, custodians. I mean, anywhere you look, there's people trying to hire people, especially in Texas.
Yeah, well, Mr. Madrid, I know that we do have a lot of age on some of these vehicles, and so a part of Proposition A, which is a total of $84 million, part of that is earmarked for transportation improvements.
Correct, yes. And like I mentioned earlier, it is much needed to keep our students safe and to have the best for our students who are going to school every single day.
Okay, so transportation is a big part of it. $51 million of Proposition A is also earmarked for educational facilities. Mr. Madrid, you're particularly familiar with middle school at this time. I know you're familiar with all campuses, but let's talk about middle school and the needs particularly of that campus. That building is getting pretty old, and I know that there are some things that campus is needing as far as refurbishment and remodeling.
Yeah, correct. That building is about 41 years old. It's about the mid-life compared to the other buildings we have in the district. I think our oldest building in the district is about 90 years old, with our newest facilities being about 3 years old. And so that building does have some what worries me the most about our buildings, all our buildings across campus, are things you don't see, such as the infrastructure of sewer lines, gas lines, water lines, things like that are usually underneath the floor, underneath terrazzo and concrete floors that we've had issues with in the past. And so That's one of the biggest issues we've had to deal with, is things underneath that you don't see.
Yeah.
And then, of course, just like anything else, our HVAC and heating units in our facilities, when you have school 187 days and you're looking at employees who are there all the time, and our kids, HVAC units are running 24/7 for them. And so sometimes those issues come up in our schools as well. And so we have some very old units that we're replacing, and it's very costly.
Okay, so let's go to Mr. Alvarado for a moment here. And Mr. Alvarado, you're at the high school, and you're very familiar with that campus as well. So let's take a look at some of the specifics at the high school campus that you see that need improvement.
Thank you, Mr. Ripley. Well, first of all, I'd like to let the audience know I've been in Fort Stockton for 16 years now.
Right. You were a math teacher. Started out as a math
yes,
teacher.
Sir.
A very good one.
Right there, right at that high school.
Yes.
I've seen improvements in my time here over the years, previous bonds. And I have to say, I think the district has done a very good job in maintaining its facilities. With the age that some of them have, you can tell that a lot of care has been put in the facilities. But there comes a time when you have to seriously take a look at not just repairs, but replacing or rebuilding. I'll tell a quick story. Each year when we do Water Carnival, we have previous graduating classes come and tour and visit the high school. Well, I had a good group last summer, and a lot of the comments that I heard were very kind and very optimistic about what they see in our facilities, and they were impressed by the changes that they have seen already.
Yeah.
We've had folks come to town that had never seen the new commons area at the high school.
Right.
The change of the facade, the natatorium. They got to tour and see all of those facilities. Some of the facilities, though, and I'm talking about graduating classes decades back, they said that some things haven't changed at all.
Yeah.
And so it's some of those things that need to be addressed. Our library, for example, is ready for an update.
Yeah.
The function of the library has changed over the years.
Right.
Libraries are multi-purpose facilities. They're learning centers. It's not just a place to get books anymore.
Right.
The auditorium is another one I'd like to point out.
Yeah.
I've visited many auditoriums in high schools, and I must say that our auditorium is grand. It really is a jewel compared to many others that I've seen. And so it's my hope that we're able to improve that facility. I know that we've done some work to it in the past, but things like electrical infrastructure, again,
Yes.
Mr. Madrid said the things that you don't see, what you don't see behind those curtains, above those curtains, the rigging, all of those things need to be addressed.
Well, Mr. Alvarado, one of the main points of this bond, too, is focus on bringing back auto mechanics and cosmetology. Now, the career and technology education facilities are going to be apparently refurbished and brought back to the Fort Stockton ISD with that. So is that going to be, now I know auto mechanics, is that going to be out at the bus barn, or will that be around your facility?
What we would like is to bring back the shop that once was automotive technology
So it
over
would be
at the high school.
Located at the high school?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that would be, based back over there again at the high school. And then career technology, which cosmetology, there were facilities for that previously, but I guess they were phased out and maybe changed. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yes, years and years ago, before my time even, that program was phased out, and there's been an interest in that program recently. It is a career and technical program. On the state side and even on the federal side, cosmetology is a program of study. And so these are legitimate courses that students can take. There is a proper sequence of courses, and ultimately leading towards state certification in that area.
Licensing, yes.
Yes, sir. Now, as far as the facility goes, the shell of what was once the lab is still there. It is still intact. We hope that can be brought back up to par. A lot of the infrastructure is still there. The electrical that's needed is there or nearby. The plumbing, But I do know that, and we do have a scheduled visit from Midland College to come and visit and just look at the facility to see what might be needed. So we do have some experts in the field coming to assess our facility and hopefully give recommendations on what's needed to bring that lab up to where it's usable again.
Well, I'm very impressed with what was done with the last bond money to your high school front offices, all of that area, your counseling center, also the commons area and the cafeteria. That was excellent work there. And, you know, that commons area was actually made out of that open sort of patio, right?
That's correct. There used to be a patio there.
Yes. But now you've turned it into a really nice facility.
It is a very nice facility, and it is still a multi-purpose facility.
Yes.
It is the dining area for cafeteria, but another thing that was purchased with that bond was the furniture, and that furniture can be moved. It can be removed. That space opens right up, and we can host other events in that same space.
Okay, and while we're with you here on this part of the interview, let's talk about the high school field house. Now, that is a facility that, in my opinion, is very vastly outdated and inadequate. We don't have room for visiting teams to dress. We have to put them in the HPE building. Our athletic programs have grown so much that that facility is completely outdated. It's got all kinds of issues with the utilities and so forth. So talk about the field house a little bit, Mr. Alvarado.
The field house, from what I understand, is kind of it's been a process, I think, to get the building the size that it is right now. It looks like there's been additions over time.
Yeah.
The infrastructure has kind of been extended. It is outdated. It is not adequate for the size of the program that we now have.
Right.
You know, another thing that I wanted to mention is that with the field house, we're looking at this is a facility for all athletes. This is a boys and girls facility. And then, of course, you know, we like to host playoff games. We like to host, and people like to come to our town.
Sure.
And so it would be just great to be able to accommodate even the big schools.
And it would be centrally located, you know, by football, by baseball, by softball, by swimming. I mean,
Tennis.
Yeah, tennis. The location that's proposed, which I guess would be in the south end zone of the stadium, is really a central location for many of our athletes.
That is correct. And again, the field house is not just a football facility. This is a multi-purpose facility to accommodate all of our sports
and
for all of our athletes.
Weight training as well.
Correct.
All right, Mr. Madrid, let's go back to you for a moment. We talked about some other things. You know, we talked about the auditorium, which is a big thing. You're a fine arts guy, so that's important to you as well, I'm sure. Now, let's talk about employee housing. One of these bond proposals is for employee housing. We've already made some strides in that area, but talk about the need for that.
Well, just like in other entities in Fort Stockton, whether you look at churches who provide a house for their preacher, there's a setup out there for the prison for people who come and work at the prison can stay there temporarily. Same thing with other entities such as the city and the county that provide certain housing for certain individuals that are high need individuals and to bring the best talent to Fort Stockton. So Fort Stockton's out in West Texas, and a lot of times people don't know where it's at, but it gives Fort Stockton, our community, an upper hand to be able to bring great talent to Fort Stockton with the ability to say, hey, you know what? We have affordable housing for you. And a lot of these I call them kids, but they're just young adults who graduate from college and, you know, they don't have a whole lot. And so it's tougher for them to find a place to stay if they don't know somebody or can get the help from their parents. And so being able to do that here in Fort Stockton brings that young talent to our schools, just like any other schools in our area do the same thing as well. And so it is extremely important to bring the best people for our students to be able to help them in classes to be their very best as well.
All right. Now, another part of this bond proposition is for technology devices. Talk about that a little bit.
Technology devices, just like anything else, you can't even get a job now without sitting at a technology device. And so it's extremely important. There's a couple of things. I had a good friend tell me there's 3 languages you need to learn in Texas. It was English, Spanish, and technology. And so at the time I thought, well, he's crazy. But nevertheless, technology is something that our kids gravitate to, and it is a huge teaching tool for our teachers as well. The upgrades that we can do for our teachers to be able to communicate with our students, to be able to teach and deliver the instruction using technology with so many resources at their fingertips to be able to help reach kids, because kids learn differently. And so using technology allows us to do that.
Okay, now there is also a proposal for a new recreation department, which would involve tearing down part of the old Alamo and then constructing a new recreation center. This is a joint project with the city and the county. Fort Stockton ISD has always contributed financially and otherwise with
Correct.
facilities to the rec department, and the city pretty much takes care of the salaries and runs the program, but Fort Stockton ISD contributes with the joint project. The county is also committed to donate $5 million to the project. So, this is a separate proposition for $5 million. There are 5 total propositions. So talk about the rec center.
The rec center, we are very fortunate in Fort Stockton to have a great working relationship with the county and with the city. And with that being said, the benefits from that are our students, the kids here in Fort Stockton. So having the rec facilities upgraded to do what's best for our kids, to have them to do something. If you can go out there at any time of the year and see little kids practicing, playing baseball, football, soccer, basketball, you name it. So kudos to all those kids who are out there working, getting things done, and especially to the parents who are helping getting them there. And so that joint venture with the county and the city has done wonders for even our sports programs, in junior high, middle school, and high school.
And it's certainly an enhancement for our community.
Correct.
Let's go back to Mr. Alvarado for a moment here. And Mr. Alvarado, let's talk about the tax implications here. I'll let you both comment on this because it's so important. This will not, the $110 million not resulting in a tax rate increase because of the way it's going to be handled, both staggering of the bonds, of the purchase of these bonds, and also paying off some prior bonds. So, Mr. Alvarado, address that a little bit.
Yes, based on the analysis that was provided to the district, that is the case, Mr. Ripley. And I wanted to comment just briefly. We had a conversation yesterday, Mr. Madrid and I, and we were just looking at just the total tax base. And I did want to point out, and I'm sure Mr. Madrid was going to comment on this as well, is that 78 to 80% of our tax base comes from the industrial side, the oil and gas side of things. And the remainder of that, somewhere around 20%, comes from real estate. So we as taxpayers, will foot 20% of that, or account for 20% of that tax base. Also, there are certain individuals in our community that are exempt or receive discounts on their property taxes. One of them that we discussed yesterday, Mr. Madrid, was 100% disabled veterans are exempt from property taxes, or at least on their primary residence. Also, don't forget that our citizens that are 65 years of age and older, the ISD taxes on the resident homestead, will not increase.
Be frozen, yes. And there are 2 additional state constitutional amendments on the ballot here coming up in May that would, give some additional property tax relief to some property owners. So that's to be considered as well, and those are to be approved by voters. But the point of all this is that we're not going to see a tax rate increase with this bond, even though it's going to provide $110 million to the Fort Stockton ISD. A very important fact to keep in mind.
Yes, sir, that's correct. And the way that if it is received, if we receive and the bond is passed, the way that it's going to be structured and rolled out, I think, will be done in an intelligent way and in a fiscally responsible way. There is no need right now to cash in all or pull on all of these bonds all at once.
Right.
These are planned and it'll be timely.
Right. Okay, back to you, Mr. Madrid. Let's talk about the fact that, and we were talking about this a little bit before the show, that the money here that's given to Fort Stockton ISD, if the bonds are approved and sold over time, the money will all stay in the Fort Stockton ISD.
Correct. In Texas, we have a system that's some people know as Robin Hood, and in schools we call it recapture, and it has to do with property wealth school districts. And so right now, Fort Stockton ISD does give about $5.7 million in recapture back to the state.
Annually.
Yes, annually. So that's our taxpayers' money
Yes.
that we have no control over
Right.
what we get to do. In fact, it's a check sent that says, "Hey, here you go, Austin. Do what you want to do with it." When you do a bond, all that money stays here. It stays in Fort Stockton. It doesn't go anywhere. It provides what we want, for our students and for our staff and for our community. And so that's important to know. And if you can do that without raising the tax rate, even better.
Yeah, and with a tax base of $2.6 billion or more in the Fort Stockton ISD, it does allow for the district to raise quite a bit of money with just 1 cent of tax.
Correct. Yes, and like I said, that 1 cent of tax does raise quite a bit, and 80% of that coming from the oil and gas industry, as Mr. Alvarado mentioned. But the thing that's very important to know is that money stays here for our kids, our community, our staff, our teachers. And that's huge when you look at the impact that it can be done.
Okay, so is there anything else that you two would like to add to our discussion today?
I would like to add just one. I'd like to add just one thing, Mr. Ripley.
Yes.
Of each of the 5 propositions, I would like for our community to know that each one of these is put in place with students in mind. Above all, students first.
Yes, absolutely.
Proposition A is $84 million for educational facilities and transportation. This directly impacts our kids. Proposition B for the stadium facilities, field house, things like that, that is going to enhance and improve our athletic program, which many students participate in.
Yes.
The employee housing, one might ask, what does that have to do with our kids? This is in an effort to recruit top talent and bring them to Fort Stockton and keeping them in Fort Stockton. We want the best teachers for our students. Proposition D, the technology devices. That's not just the devices that students hold in their hands and use every day. We're also talking about infrastructure. Again, the things that you don't see, the fiber runs, maintaining a network, which we have to keep humming all the time. Those are very expensive.
Continuing to keep abreast of all the newest technology and the upgrades, because the technology goes obsolete fairly quickly.
That's true. We issue a device 1 year to a student, and it's like your cell phone. You have your cell phone for 2 or 3 years, and your cell phone is obsolete. There is a better, faster device out there. Well, the same thing happens with a lot of our equipment. It needs to be upgraded, and it needs to be replaced. So the technology expenses are ongoing. And then lastly, the recreation center and facility. Again, someone might ask, what does that have to do with Fort Stockton ISD? It has a lot to do with Fort Stockton ISD. This is a facility, a joint facility, that benefits all children in our community. And you're also building up and preparing your future athletes for the Fort Stockton ISD.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you all very much for being here today. A reminder again that early voting begins on Monday. All voters in the Fort Stockton ISD are eligible to vote in this election. There are also a couple of ward elections for school board trustees that will be happening in those wards. But the voting will be in the early voting period at the courthouse annex, and then on Election Day it will be in your voting precinct. And then Election Day will be May the 7th, and it's on a Saturday. So we encourage everyone to go vote in this election. Thank you all very much for being here. Roy Alvarado and Gilray Madrid, two assistant superintendents in Fort Stockton ISD.